All right, we got another one from Pax. Why everyone's talking about this new MMO? I feel like there's MMO every damn week or so, or every damn day or so. There's a new MMO coming out. It's like Blue Protocol, some other random anime that are fucking crap that didn't fucking blow up yet, or somewhere in Korea. something from the east coming over to the west. Something. Yeah, here's another one.
We had the pleasure of getting a brand new MMO.
See what it's about, baby.
This happens very rarely, so when it does, it's quite the event for fans of the genre. The game was called Pax Dei, and according to its developer, it is a vast social sandbox, low fantasy MMO inspired by the legends of the medieval era with community and emergent gameplay at its heart. Now, initial reception for both of its reveal trailer and developer deep dive were very positive. Each video has like hundreds and thousands of views and is full of comments expressing interest in the game. As for the game, what do we know? Well, the reveal did give us a few of the basics. It's an open world, player-driven survival.
Of course, it's an open world. Of course. Right.
Sandbox MMO. The core loop of the game will involve the typical gathering materials, crafting weapons and armor, and building bases. We'll start in a region of the world known as the Heartlands, where we are free to build and craft in relative safety, and then, once we are prepared, we can venture out into the woodlands full of dangerous PvE enemies and the threat of other players, as the game does have PvP. We saw snippets of various systems in the developer vid. There was some base building on display, a variety of different size and types of buildings, which include up to player-built cities. They have in fact said that every building in this game will be player-built. There were crafting stations with players making potions, weapons, and armor. We also saw refining stations like tanning racks and smelters. There were some shots of the UI, which showed us what looked to be work-in-progress equipment and inventory system. There was also a tab for skills, implying some sort of character progression. And there were a few brief clips of combat with players hunting wildlife, during which I'll say gameplay animations look a bit rough, but given that this game, they haven't announced that it's launching anytime soon, and they said that the combat is a placeholder. With all of that in mind, we'll cut the combat animations a little bit of slack. They also
I kind of give it that a little bit of slack because you know, we literally had a video with Neo Blin or whatever, and those frames were just woo. Ooh, boy.
Discuss the game's use of low fantasy, pulling from myths and fables from around the world. Pax Dei will have magic, but it is going to be sparse. You won't be like spamming fireballs, for example. So that is a basic overview of what we learned about Pax Dei during its reveal last month. Now, since then, tons of new information has come out through interviews, AMAs, FAQs, as well as some idle chat over on the official.
This is almost like right on the line of, oh my goodness, if this was freaking frame dropping and frame going freaking 5 FPS or something, and then
core channel. We know
I feel like most games you know that in the modern times, like you gotta have what's the mandatory thing? Good like 60 FPS has to be like bare minimum. Your game at 30 FPS to get out of here, you know. But 60 is like, I think should be the standard for like any game. 60 FPS. If your game ain't 60 FPS, you screw it, you know. I mean, some games can work with 30 FPS, but you know, 60 should be the standard for all games. Because you know, when people play on PC or the new systems, 60 FPS. Anything else after that is good to go, you know. But yeah, for the most part, yeah, and graphics too. I'll say graphics is like hit or miss, but it depends on the style of it, you know. Like you could have freaking Hi-Fi Rush graphics and still be a good game, and then you could have what is it? Freaking Cuphead, and you're good to go, you know. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can go.
Much more about Pax Dei than we did just a few weeks ago. We also know more about
This is an interesting
Now I want to dive
concept.
into some of the nitty-gritty new details that have come out on the game. As I mentioned, a lot of this new information comes from a few sources. There were a couple of developer interviews that were done, as well as a published FAQ and an ever-growing AMA with some very chatty developers over on the official Discord. Let's start off with the game's inspiration. They have said that Pax Dei is filled with gameplay elements that borrow from all sorts of games, from the survival genre and games like Ark Survival Evolved. But maybe more so is that the game borrows heavily from things like the economic model of Eve when it comes to the fact that they use geography-based.
And I think there's nothing wrong with, you know, getting inspired by other games to put in your game. I think that's a good, you know, it's like a little good nod, you know, sometimes I think for games to take other games like, oh, this game just works well in this game and people seem to enjoy it. Let's put that same system slightly in our game to add on to it. And then that's how you get freaking shooters like Call of Duty, literally. Because what was it for the most part? Call of Duty and Battlefield, and you had Call of Duty, Battlefield, Medal of Honor, freaking Bad Company, all those other freaking shooting games. What was the other freaking crazy one? Yeah, Unreal, freaking Shadow Warriors. Yeah, all these freaking shooting games back in the day. What is it? Turok, all that shit, you know? Doom. And every game was kept progressing of what it was. Because Doom started it off with the first person shooting all crazy wild, and you had the GoldenEye back in the 90s. People was going crazy for that. Then Half-Life and Quake or some shit. Yeah, man. You had a bunch of stuff. And then what happened after that? That's when you see the Battlefields, the Call of Duty start coming in and just adding on to it and keep going, progressing the shooting genre even more to what it is today.
Dynamic marketplace. To quote the developer directly, they said, being an MMO, harvesting and crafting are core pillars of the experience in the game. But in our world, the weapons, the armor, the construction pieces needed for your village, these are all items that are crafted and manufactured by the players themselves. So essentially,
also crafting can kind of suck too. Like if it's slow, and there's people, and especially if fans don't like it, your game gonna die quick. It's gonna die so damn quick.
In the world have been produced by someone else in the game. Having recently gone back to Albion Online, this is very reminiscent of what that game does. It's got this player-driven economy, but it's player-fueled. Players touch every aspect of it. Anything that's involved in the trading system is something that a player either harvested, refined, or crafted themselves. And I think that makes for a real interesting experience, especially when layered on everything else. So the Heartlands, this is where things begin for us in the game. Players begin in these relatively high elevations among this green foresty region known as the Heartlands. There we will be working with other players in safety. We can, without much concern, build up small villages, join and create clans, plant crops, craft equipment, do some basic
safe
farming, gathering, hunting of wildlife. And the sight lines from where you are in the Highlands are going to be very purposefully long, they say. So you are elevated and you can look down amongst the world as it kind of goes.
I might be like kind of new to this, but does like, if people keep building in a safe harbor area or whatever, does anybody can keep building on top of that, or just like one person is like in God mode creating these things, or they just harvest and choose to keep creating? Let me know.
Into these deep areas, these cavernous areas, these dense woodlands, and those are all places they've said you can go. It's like the Skyrim pitch, right? You see that mountaintop, you can go there. Well, in this case, you start off on the mountaintop and you can go as far as the eye can see. What's even more interesting, though, is they say the different ways that they try to motivate players to get there, because it does seem like this is going to be a game where the further out you push, the more dangerous it gets. And I quite like the structure that they're talking about with this game, where you start off in this like safe haven, you build yourself up, you do all of the basics, and then once you're feeling brave enough and you feel like you have your equipment and you're prepared, then you start pushing out, you push down into these dense wooded areas and start the exploration. And the further you go away from the Heartlands, the more dangerous things get. It's a really cool kind of adventure-y promise. Let's talk about the questing. The game does not have a traditional MMO quest system. You are not going to be picking up quests from NPCs because, as mentioned, there are no friendly NPCs in the game. Only enemy NPCs. You will not find find any quest givers in towns. That's just not what this game is doing. To quote directly here, they say you won't find any of the traditional MMO NPC cities, NPC quest givers, or NPC vendors in the world, but you will find a wide selection of creatures and AI enemies in PvE. Players will inhabit the lands, build the towns, handle the trading, do the crafting. All of that is player driven. No quest givers, however, does not mean no quest content, as the world will be filled with lore and mysteries that require.
That sounds good, slightly in theory, but didn't this happen with Fallout? And people didn't like that? But then again, this is a different type of game, but I remember Fallout having something similar, like there was going to be like no NPCs for Fallout. It was like going to be character driven, player driven type content creation, almost the exact same thing, and people didn't like that. And that game fell on deaf ears with that, but then again, the way it came out was also shitty too, but we'll see how this turns out.
Exploration, deduction, and collaboration, or when it comes to how that actually plays out in the game, you're gonna get quests from different items in the world. So maybe you find some clues scribbled on a book, or inside of a ring, or carved onto the surface of a piece of pottery. All of these will provide you a narrative drive, but also objectives to go towards based on whatever it was you found.
So
now, the exploration is
like
said to be a big element of Pax Dei. I'm really liking what I see here. So they said that when it comes to venturing out from the safety of the Heartlands, the next area that you go into is the wilderness, and there does seem to be an implication here that there will be things beyond the wilderness. Maybe we think of these almost as different biomes, and the further you get, you move into, maybe eventually you move into swamp, or you move into the desert or other areas. I don't know, that hasn't been confirmed, but I'm just hypothesizing here. There does seem to be the implication that there is an area beyond the wilderness. So in the wilderness, this is where things get more dangerous, more deadly creatures, and this is also where they're going to start
build
playing
anywhere,
with
right?
kind of the fantasy folklore inspiration. A direct quote from the developer here: "We don't intend to just expand outwards. More often than not, we want to expand inward, actually doing things like making dungeons deeper." So say that you've been playing for a few years and then something happens in the world. Now you have a reason to go back because there was a door at the bottom of the dungeon that is now suddenly open, or an underground lake that is cleared, or a bridge that has been broken. Something changes and you have another reason to go back. This sort of dynamic evolution of areas is really, really cool. It's something actually that they're talking about doing with like Ashes of Creation, where with time, with certain events that take place, things in the world can change, and so that one dungeon that you went to isn't always going to be exactly the same, and different paths can open up, or paths can be closed down, like bridges breaking or rubble falling in, or a lake emptying, and then maybe there's a dungeon entrance at the bottom of what was once that lake. I love this dynamic environmental stuff, and I think there's a lot of potential of what they can do with this. Also, in terms of exploration, they were asked if they were going to have a fast travel system in the game, and they said that the game will feature different ways to get around, but as with many other parts of Pax Dei, there will be limitations and trade-offs when using them. The goal is not to trivialize travel and the logistics involved, but to offer a way to play most content and join your friends within a reasonable amount of time. This makes me wonder if they're going to have some sort of public transport systems, or some sort of traversal things, be it mounts or glider systems.
I can definitely see a mount,
ships that come and go,
being a thing.
Airships. There's a lot of different things.
They
you
said
can do. There
wildlife.
are going to be survival elements in Pax Dei. It isn't going to be one of those things where you have to keep up your thirst and hunger, but there will be food and drink in the game, but it just appears like that is going to be more giving you buffs. So food maybe gives you health, and drink maybe gives you something like more stamina.
As long as it's not a requirement, you have to eat in order to stay living or whatever. As long as you don't have to keep doing that shit, as long as you don't have to have that requirement like that. But if it's only just for like boosting your carrots or whatever with items or whatever, that's fine. But if you have to eat all the damn time and drinking water or something like that to keep your carrots, I'm not a fan of that. I hate that. I always hated that.
These are just some possibilities. There's also building. We've talked about this. Base building is going to be a thing. It's going to be a very big thing because all of the buildings in the game will be player constructed. They've said they've taken cues from games like Valheim. That's a great inspiration. Valheim was a fantastic game. I quite enjoyed the building. It could be cumbersome at times, but it was nevertheless addictive. And many of the 100 hours that I played Valheim, were spent on just the base building, so there was some
There you
satisfaction to be had there. They've said that the building in
happy
Pax
man.
Dei looks much like what we've seen in other survival MMOs. Building blocks effectively snap together, allowing players to build anything from a humble shack on their claimed plot of land to elaborate villages, complete with keeps, churches, which are evidently going to play a role in the Pax Dei's world as well, and even building up walls and fortifications. I really love this idea, especially knowing, because I haven't touched on this yet, but they're talking about worlds with thousands of players. They said 5,000 was on the low end. They're talking about 10, 20,000 players. Now, when you hear that, though, are they talking about phased out players or all players within one instance? That's what we don't know. I should also add one big thing they've talked about with this game is that they're going to be doing a lot of this stuff cloud-based. And if they're using cloud, if they're using server-side tech, then maybe that does mean we get player counts that high. But I'm not sure exactly how that is going to play out. But nevertheless, yeah, we got a full-on survival game, large numbers of players, and we're going to have tons of crafting stuff building up this world. It all sounds really cool. Now, what about progression? They were asked about things like classes or leveling up and skill points and all of that, and their response was, there won't be any classes in the way you think about it. You won't choose one in the character creation and be stuck with that forever. But that being said, no classes doesn't mean no roles. There will be roles, but we don't have those full details yet. They can share the crucial element, though, that yes, this game will support the Holy Trinity. So tank, healers, support, DPS, that trinity is going to be a part of Pax Dei. So a classless version of this that's going to have the trinity leads me to believe it's going to be gear based. So depending on the gear that you equip, that's going to change if you are filling that tank role, that healer role, or that DPS role. I enjoy these systems. I actually really like how they do it in Albion Online. I think that's a good template of inspiration.
Yeah, as long as they don't go straight into like the whole PvP aspect, like super hardcore, like this game is just only for survival and PvP, baby. That's all you. That game going to die out so goddamn quick. Because the people will get the best gear and they're just gonna wash everybody on the goddamn server or whatever.
For how to build a classless system that still has the holy trinity of roles for players to fulfill. As to the leveling side of things, they said that they don't have a global character level, but they do have skills, and those skills have a leveling system. Now let's talk about PvP and PvE. They actually described what their intention was for PvP without being too specific. So they said they want to make PvP feel more dynamic and more about social structures, roles, and positions of power in player-formed communities, instead of just a static PvP toggle or zone restrictions. We don't want PvP to feel like a separate mode and create a gap between PvE and PvP players. PvP should be an integral part of the world and economy. We plan to offer players interesting and meaningful ways to opt in and dip their toes in PvP. So the goal for them, they say, is to marry PvE and PvP together by offering opportunities for both to bring value to the party, be it facing the dangers of PvP or creating the best gear for PvP players. The Heartlands will be restricted from any PvP fighting. Outside of that, players will have various options to choose if and how they want to experience PvP and how much they are willing to risk in order to do so. So really interesting talk here. Clearly, they're saying that they don't want to force people into PvP, but they also want PvP to not feel like it's completely divorced from the rest of the game. And again, I keep going back to it, but a great example in my mind is what Albion Online does, where they have these very distinct regions that are all part of the main world, and depending on where you venture into, you will know if PvP is going to happen, what sort of PvP, if it's full-on PvP, if it's loot dropping, if there's any sort of safety, if flagging isn't involved. There's some just very distinct borders to all of these things. So I guess I'm just going to be really curious. They did say they don't want to have a static PvP toggle or zone restrictions, but in my mind, those are the two main ways you do it if you're not trying to force people into PvP.
Yeah, or just have like, have certain gear that, if somebody's had weaker gear, just give them, what's the damn correct word to say that? I forget. I don't know how you say it, how you put it. But like balance the gear maybe? I don't know. It's like, so they don't get blown up if somebody has like ultra crazy gear or legendary gear or whatever. There you go. Yeah. Just have it like it's level scaling. I think it's something like that. Yeah, so people don't get blown the hell out. Pretty much. I think it's something like that. Level scaling, maybe. forget what you call it. But anyway, yeah, have something like that, and that'll probably solve the problem. Because somebody jumps into a freaking PvP match unannounced about, oh, they just looking and searching, and they run into an area where there's nothing but a PvP zone, and they're like, I want to get in the zone, but they were searching for something, and it's in that zone, and you got players just sitting around like, oh yeah, we waiting for these, just wait for the, about to teddy everybody up in this server right now, just camping out. Then yeah, they screwed. You know.
I don't know. I'm very intrigued as to what they intend to do with this. PvP isn't all there is. There is going to be PvE content in the game, quite a bit actually. You're gonna,
I hope they go full on with PvE content.
Parts of them towards the crafting, maybe even food and drink. The PvE content is going to be getting more challenging as you push further and further away from the Heartlands, or as they've touched on, as you go deeper down into dungeons when they continue to expand them. And they have also confirmed we will be getting not only dungeon content but raid content as well. So you might have got the assumption early on that this is like a primarily PvP focused game with the survival crafting stuff, but no, sounds like they're gonna have a lot of content for PvE fans that isn't just doing crafting. They also mentioned that the gameplay that they've shown is just work in progress. They're gonna be doing some big overhauls to it. This is more like a proof of concept, what we've seen so far, which I think should also have us set our expectation as to how far along this game is in development, or even more so, how far away it is. And they did touch on this in their FAQ. They said there's no date for Pax Day's release, but as soon as they know, they're going to let everyone know, and they're currently going through alpha testing, which you can sign up for right now on their website. You know, I'm not surprised that this game has seen so much excitement behind it. I think there's a lot of really cool and interesting things. This pitch that they have of, hey, we've got like a bunch of industry veterans. We've worked on MMOs. We're finally making the game we've always dreamed of. We've heard that a lot. And a lot of times that doesn't really seem to come to bear. We don't really end up seeming to get maybe what that lofty goal is. But it's certainly possible. And, you know, the one real positive check mark for this game is they have a lot of really good backing here. One thing that's been brought up a lot is the fact that they've made quite a bit in funding. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but something like $30 million, which is and isn't a lot of money, especially when it comes to developing an MMO, especially when you consider the length of development, typically somewhere in the ballpark of 5 to 7 years long. I'm imagining 30 million isn't going to take care of the salaries as well as all of the other expenses.
Isn't like you got to do with the servers and shit
over the course of the next 5 years. And more funding will have to come from somewhere at some point, because a lot of the MMOs we know and love and play were somewhere in the vicinity of like $100 million to $500 million for the cost of development. So in that context, 30 million or so that they've raised doesn't seem like that much money. But I'm not trying to down this. I just think it's the main point is it's still early days. There's still a lot to be worked on, most certainly. There's still a lot to be
that run out pretty damn quick,
and we're still probably many years away from release. But it sounds cool. Lots of interesting promises, and we'll see how they all pan out. That's going to do it for this video, though. Thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.
Very good. But yeah, man. For sure. Yeah, I think a lot of times there's always an MMO that's saying the right things and stuff. And, you know, of course, implementing it is a whole brand new goddamn thing of worms to do. But yeah, these games, these MMOs, they coming out more and more, or they getting talked about more and more from what I see. It's like between, like, I always been in the fighting game genre, you know, fighting game or shooting genre. That was my thing. And then, of course, you know, Battlefield and Call of Duty's been all fucking just spamming each other, doing the same thing over and over. And now you got MMO genre putting concepts and doing different things, which is good, I'll say. Like, if your game does that, that's good. But you gotta make the game fun, man. There's no question. You gotta have the good frame rate, and it's gotta have the fun factor in it. Because if you gotta keep fucking crafting stuff and all this gathering, that your game gonna die out so goddamn quick. Like the gathering stuff is freaking hard to do, and you just fucking person is just complaining the whole way, your game gonna fucking leave. They gonna leave so goddamn fast. I know I will leave. Hell, as soon as somebody like, man, you gotta gather this space, and I gotta go way over here to A, and I'm not even in that zone, and I gotta go way back over here to B zone to collect this one thing, and I can't fast travel nowhere. So yeah, hopefully with MMO stuff, yeah, they be able to fix that or iron out, and we will get that one game that can just everybody plays or everybody know of and play it, you know. But yeah, of course, people are gonna look for games to see if it's pay to win or pay for convenience somewhat. But yeah, if the convenience is fine and you don't have to pay, your game gonna be good. But if you gotta, pay for every damn thing in the game to fucking look cool and all that other shit, 50-50, in my opinion. Could turn off people, could turn on people. You never know. But anyway, good video. Yeah. Pax Dei. We'll see. See what the comments say over here. Yep, looks like, yep, I was just thinking that. Yep, do MMO every week actually releasing. Yeah, all this stuff around here, man. Yeah, buddy. There you go. Too good to be true. We got no friendly NPCs because that worked out so well with. Yes, that's what I'm saying. This right here, yeah, Fallout 76. Yes, this is what I'm talking about right here. Because I remember Fallout did something similar to this, and that was not good whatsoever. I forgot it was. Yeah, I forgot the name of it. I knew it was Fallout. I forgot which one was it. But yeah, he's right. He is definitely right about that. Keep an eye on this game. Yep. More interested. Yep. Thinking like Ashes. Yep. I guess definitely see it, but like I said, if they focus on PvP more, yeah, this game is going to be dungeon, in my opinion. Because I don't think I ever heard anybody like MMO was like, man, Final Fantasy PvP is the best. I never heard nothing like that. Might have heard that in the single player games, maybe, Spider-Man, God of War, Elden Ring, stuff like that. But I know MMO stuff ever. I think they was like, oh, this good concept, or maybe great gameplay, but I never heard nobody like, man, that PvP is dope, man. I gotta play that shit. For sure. All right. Anyway, there you go. The Pax Dei. Good video, man. Good video. Right on.